What's going on, everyone? In this video, we're going to talk all about how many sets, reps, training volume, how heavy you should be lifting, and how frequently you should train a muscle group during the bulk process. Now, in this three-part series, I talked all about my 5-year transformation process, 21 pounds of lean muscle mass gained. I then went into all about nutrition and what you should know about clean bulking, what not to eat, what to eat, how to progress yourself week to week, and how to make sure you're not gaining too much body fat throughout this process. Now, I saved this one for last because I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions on how they can train to maximize strength while gaining muscle. What if they're an Olympic weightlifter? Or what if they're a bodybuilder? What if they're a beginner? All those questions I'm going to try and get through today, but if I miss something, comment below, let me know, and I'll answer your questions. Now, before we get going, I want to make sure you guys don't miss my next video series, which is all going to be about how to lose the body fat that is gained inevitably through the bulk process, which is a necessary evil, and it's okay, it's going to come off great, and how to make sure that you're maintaining the muscle and strength and performance that you gained during this whole bulking process. So make sure you guys subscribe below, hit the notification tab, make sure you guys don't miss any updates out there, and make sure you stay tuned for those videos to come in the following weeks. Let's jump in and let's get started all about sets, reps, intensity, and how to train to maximize muscle growth during the bulk. I want to first talk about training intensity. I really like these terms that Renaissance Periodization put out here. When we look at certain things, we want to look at the minimal effective volume, which is the volume that we can do to create stimulus, have some adaptation, but that's about the minimum we want to do. Anything under that, we're not going to create enough stimulus. And when we look at that, we're talking about total sets per week. So if we're within that range, that's a good starting point for most people. Reps in reserve, this is a great training intensity. Sometimes, if you've ever heard of RPE, rate of perceived exertion, reps in reserve, those are two ways that as coaches, we can give an athlete a certain guideline to take a set to a certain intensity. For example, with a lot of these things, we might not be able to take a percentage of a movement. So instead we might say, hey, I want 4 sets of 8 to 10. I want you to find a weight that challenges you so that by the end of your sets, you have 1 to 2 RIR, which would be 1 to 2 good reps in reserve. And we always want to think about, we're never training to failure, but we're training close to that failure mark. And that's where we're going to do most of our training. If we train too hard and we get over that reps in reserve and we have none left in the tank every single workout, by the second, third, fourth week, you have no more room to progress. So instead, by leaving 2-3 reps in the tank on the first week, the second week come in, leave 1 to 2 reps in the tank, the third week, leave another 1 to 2 or maybe 1 in the tank, and by the fourth week, you could deload and restart that cycle with new movements, making sure that you have those intensities built in there to allow yourself to progress every week. So the next part we want to look at is training frequency in terms of how frequently do we want to train a muscle group. Now, when looking at that, most muscle groups, 1.5 to 2 times a week is the minimum, all the way up to 4, 5, even sometimes 6, depending on how you program it. My general recommendations is 2 to 3 times per week a muscle group is trained, depending on how you split your volumes up across the week. No matter how many times you do your frequency, we want to think about making sure we still stay within our total guidelines throughout the week. So for example, if we want to do 15 sets of quad dominant work, say on day 1 we do 5 sets of back squats followed by 3 sets of leg presses, that would be 8 sets on a Monday, and then say Thursday we have our other quad session and we do 4 sets of front squats and 3 sets of split squats or walking lunges. That's 7 sets, so 8 from the first day, 7 from the second day. We are at 15 total sets. If you wanted to train legs 4 days, you could take one of those exercises and put it on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Saturday. You'd spread out your volume, and that's one way we can do it, because in some sports like Olympic weightlifting, we want to spread the volume out instead of being debilitated for 3 days where we can't walk because you did all 15 sets on one day. Another caveat we want to think about is when we're doing movements, if we're, for example, in the quad day or the leg day, if we did all of our movements on that leg day, we would just be fatigued at about 45 minutes to an hour, and anything after that we really probably wouldn't have great results and great muscle contractions and great focus. Lastly, before we talk about our sets and reps and the training zones that we want to stay in for muscle building, we want to talk about what movements we should be doing. I'm a huge fan of integrating all types of movements. I like to start with compound barbell based movements because for the most bang for our buck we can add loading, we can really get good quality movements like squats and deadlifts and RDLs and overhead presses, bench presses. I like pull-ups, I like dips. All those are great beginning points. At some phases, we also need to integrate isolation movements. I also like to put in machine-based training, something like a leg press or a machine row, because we can really take that muscle to fatigue without having to be limited. For example, in a leg press, our lower back isn't as stressed as what it would be in a high rep back squat. So we're able to really isolate those muscles and not be too concerned with beating up other muscle groups in the process. So next we want to talk about sets and reps. So as you can see here, we have various ranges. I want you to really focus in on that 5 to 10 rep range, which would be our strength hypertrophy range, or some people call it our functional hypertrophy range, and then also our 8 to 15 rep range. I find that those are probably our most effective ranges to play in if we want to have optimal muscle growth, meaning we can take that muscle to fatigue, good amounts of loading, and if we're too heavy, sometimes the loading's too much and the fatigue isn't as high, and then if it's too light of weight, sometimes under 30-40% of our maxes, our fatigue's really high, but that muscle loading isn't very high. So we try to find that, strike that balance, and those rep ranges typically are the ones we want to spend most of our time with. Now, I will say that certain rep ranges can respond differently with body. So my legs, for example, when I was doing my heavy squats, doing 5s, I didn't really feel my legs so much. I obviously felt I was getting stronger, but I didn't necessarily notice leg size gains. And when I did leg presses of 10, 15 reps or lunges of higher reps, my legs were severely sore and DOMs really set in, and that let me know that that might be a range that I kind of want to experiment more with because my legs might do better with moderate loading, higher rep work versus my chest. When I did the moderate high rep work, I just felt fatigued, I just felt joint soreness, but when I did my 5s on bench press, my chest was sore for days. So you can experiment with different rep ranges, make those notes, and start building out your program accordingly. So the last one I want to talk about is how do you plan your annual bulking and cutting cycles. So some people will do 2 cycles a year, some people do 1. Me, currently what I'm doing is I'm averaging about 1 to 1.5 a year. So my cycle usually starts in the winter. I'll do a 12-week bulk cycle, and then I will maintain that weight for about 2 to 4 weeks, and then I'll go into a cutting cycle during the spring. So when in the summer I'm maintaining and I'm hanging out in that nice new lean physique. And then in the fall, I either will maintain that weight until the following winter where I can start my bulk again, or I'll actually start a mini bulk in the fall because I'm also training a lot because that's a competitive season for Olympic weightlifting, and that way I'm well fed during this period. I recommend, if you're somebody who wants to get into this, I recommend starting with 1 bulk per year, see how that goes, retweak your process, and then you can move forward with either doing it every 6 months or you can do it once a year and really take your time hanging out in these maintenance cycles. Before we wrap up, I want to just make point here that when we do a bulk cycle, typically those last 12, 14, maybe 16 weeks, that's about as long as I would go. Then we have to make sure before we go into that cut, you have to hang out in a maintenance cycle. What that basically does is teach their body to hang out during that weight. Now we have to maintain this weight. Typically it's about 4 to 6 weeks, and then we can safely go into that cut phase without having our body quickly rebound down. It's the same theory that happens when people lose a bunch of weight and then they shoot right back up because they haven't taught their body to stay down there and to become accustomed to that new weight. So I recommend what you want to do is you want to bulk 12 weeks, 14 weeks, whatever it would be, hang out there for 4 weeks, maintain that weight, and then go into your cutting cycle anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, and then again, at the end of that cut cycle, you're going to want to start eating again, but you have to do a little bit longer and a maintenance cycle of 4 weeks or so where you slowly increase your calories so you don't just shoot back up and gain a bunch of body fat, and then you can restart that cycle. So the total annual cycle would be about 26, 24 weeks, and that's how I would program myself for an annual bulk 1 or 2 times a year. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was super helpful for a lot of you out there who might have issues gaining weight, keeping weight on, and really just wanting to increase your muscle gain year after year. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below with what you liked about it, what questions you may have, and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you guys do that because I'm going to be posting in a couple weeks here my cutting video, which will complement this one perfectly. Alright guys, that's it for me. I'm out.